Welcome you today. My name's Kevin Ritberger, and I teach up front here every couple months. And our lesson today is about Joesph. And I'm not going to bore you up front here. You've heard the story before, but I do like a story, and it's a good story. And in the Bible, there's many stories, and some of them are just pragmatic, where so-and-so showed up, the plot happened, and the end result. This story's got, more detail. I wouldn't say a lot of drama, but there's a lot going on in the story, and it just makes it, it doesn't matter how many times you hear that story, it's a good, it's a good story. So, it's the story of Joesph, and when his brothers finally come to Egypt and they meet again. So I grew up with good stories. My grandfather told good stories, and he got to the point in his life that some of the best ones would come about every 3 days. Okay? And the thing is this mind wasn't slipping. It was just a good story. It was. And I have found that with my own 2 daughters, I only have 2 children, they're both daughters, that I tend to tell the same story again. Okay? I tried to at least say, all right, I'm going to tell this again, but it warrants telling because something happened, and the story relates. Whether it's a pet or something, or it rained, or the tornado, or I went to the doctor, or they went to the doctor, and they come home and said this, and I said, hey, you remember when I went, So, yeah, but my grandfather, those stories. In fact, my grandmother would say, there was one time she says, you just told that. And, or yesterday or something. And I remember her saying that, and I thought to him, and I always look back and I thought, I don't think she was helping remind him. I just think that to him, I don't know why she said that. But to him, he liked a good story. So I always did like a good story, and I think that I could tell some pretty good ones. But here's just before we get, Joesph, he solved dreams. And I'm looking around at the crowd today. I think you're all right. I was going to say, don't get weird on me, okay? But dream-wise, there was never a dream that I had that ever really counted for much. Really, there wasn't. I've been waiting for that stock market dream. You know what I'm saying? That kind of dream, that hasn't happened. So, when I was in college, I went to college for 4.5 years. And bachelor of science degree. But anyway, did a lot of math and such. And I was talking to some friends, and they said, and I kind of had the same dream. Not the same dream, but it was always about showing up for class, and you're missing your homework, or you didn't get your stuff done, or it was test day, and it was always that sinking feeling, how am I going to make it through now? Again, I'll cover it. You didn't have your homework, it was due. Or it was test time, and I was talking to this other guy. I was 21 years old, and he says, I have the same dream. He says, I keep having the same one. He said, for some reason, I still remember him telling me, he said, somehow, the work or homework I was supposed to turn in, somewhere during the night, he said early morning, about 4 in the morning, he said, I'm dropping it out a 2-story window. And he says, I watch it drop. And I don't remember if his hands got caught in the window or something, but it's the same dream. And he said, I need that because I have to turn it in. And he says, it's the same fear factor. I did all this work, and now I'm going to get a bad grade. And I told him, I said, it's the strangest thing. I said, I keep showing up for this class, and I don't know how I'm going to make it through. And I'm bumming pencils off the next person. I don't have pens or paper. I said, and so, anyway, that's my dream. So I bored you with that. Anybody, like I said, don't get weird on me. And I didn't get weird on you, though, but anybody get any dreams?
I get dreams of tornadoes.
Okay, I'm just going to say again, just because Robert asked me, because nobody can hear in the room and people at home watching, but dreams of tornadoes. That's what dreams of tornadoes.
Yeah, my whole life. That's why I always think someday I might see it.
Oh, so,
Well, that's just a guess.
well, I hate to date, I'm 51 years old, and I'm still having the same dream about being in a class, and I'm having to bum a pencil from somebody, okay? Still, not weekly, but at least 2-3 times a year. Literally bumming pencils. I'm going to make it through. And okay. So, tornadoes. So you're talking probably a couple, 20 years, still those tornadoes.
Yeah, they don't come.
Oh.
Just going everywhere.
Tornadoes, 2, 3, 4 in the sky, going everywhere. Black. Tornadoes. Okay. My wife will tell me about, I've been married 17 years, and I know the first couple of years being married, she'd tell me about, she had some dreams or whatever. And truthfully, I don't put too much to dreams. I don't, okay? I don't. So finally, I decided I was going to interpret hers for her. That's not fair. So anyway, my interpretations of dreams, it's like, no, that's not what it means. Anybody else? I'll tell another story about this gentleman that he was a rancher, and we used to rent some ground to farm and irrigate. And he had this same dream he told me. He said he keeps having it. Before I tell you his dream, anybody else dreams? Anybody? Or you all like me, don't put much thought in them? I really don't put much basis into them. I think that they're stress-related. I do think it's a stress-related thing. You mentioned tornado. No, so you're talking something traumatic might not be the right word, but just something that causes problems, And so, well, nobody's jumping in here, but this rancher friend, he's probably about 80 years old now, and he's not 80, he's about 88. But he told me he had this same dream. He says he's laying in bed, but he's dreaming. He's not awake, but he says, obviously it's night, but he says, I'm dreaming in my dream that I'm sleeping, which of course he's sleeping. But he says, I dream that there's a rattlesnake in bed with me. And he said, it's right beside me. He says, it's the same dream. And he says, it's beside me. And he said, if I lay real still, it won't bite me. He says, that's in my dream. He says, so in my dream, if I just lay real still. And so I asked him, so do you think while you're having this dream, you're laying real still? And he said, yeah, of course. So, hey, do you know that he told me that within 4 or 5 years, he got bit by a rattlesnake? He did. Now, did the dream have anything to do with, foreboding or whatever? No, I'm going to tell you what the real deal was. He can't hear. He couldn't, and he wouldn't wear a hearing aid. So when he talked, so the thing is that rattlesnake was probably going, and he just, he was outside doing some work or whatever. But that's, yeah. So I don't put a lot of things in dreams. Okay, a hearing aid would have fixed that problem. So, but no, this is a true story. It did. He would tell me that. He says, I keep having the same dream. Within 4 years, he got bit by a rattlesnake. And to keep stories going on and on, a lot of the community would say, oh yeah, his name was Walt, okay? Walt's tough old rancher guy, and the same thing is said, he got bit by a snake, but everybody said it hurt the snake worse than it did Walt. Anyway, he was a hard landlord. Yeah. but we made a lot of money together, so we got along, okay? Not a lot. I mean, my world, this was 20 years ago. We did all right. So he owned the ground, I did the work. But that was his dream story. Let me read you, I'm going to pop this phone up here because this is, like I said, my easy reading. Hey, before I move, was there any... I told you my simple dream. You told your simple dream. Fine. Was there, before we move on, anything? Any dream? Stress-related dream? Okay, that's fine. I do like yours, though, because it's something simple. Mine was something simple, too. It's the same thing over and over. And you're saying same thing over and over. It's those tornadoes. Mine is that classroom. And the teacher's not being mean, but it's like, how am I going to make this work? I haven't studied the material. Okay, here's the dream. Here's another thing that happens. I can't see with my glasses on. So let me just start out with this dream. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile. When out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night. Each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream, and things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled." So Pharaoh sent for Joesph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joesph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." "I cannot do it," Joesph replied to Pharaoh, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Then Pharaoh said to Joesph, "In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile." I'm not going to read it again about the cows and such, because I already read that. So that's through 19, 20, and 21. And then 22 again, 24 about the heads of grain. Then in 25, then Joesph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh that what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. And this, in verse 36, this food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. Hey, in verse, I'm going to just stop there for a second. In verse, I'm not found. In my version here, I just read that they said the good years are going to be good, but when the famine starts, everybody's going to forget the good years. What do we do now? There was a John Steinbeck. He wrote I don't know if it was in The Grapes of Wrath or if it was in Mice and Men. But John Steinbeck was writing in the 1930s. He wrote a lot of stories that were like in California. That's where a lot of their farming and different, Grapes of Wrath, those Oklahomans went there. Well, anyway, I think it was in Mice and Men, but it might not have been either books, but he said this. He understood farming, but he said this, is that the farmer would, he said, the minute it starts raining, and raining is good. Raining is abundance. It said that the farmer instantly can't remember when the last time it didn't rain. It's rained so much to the point it's a problem. Can't get the crop in. And he said likewise, when immediately it stops raining and it hasn't rained for a long time, the farmer can't even remember the last time it rained. So you get the funny right there is that well, it's right here in the Bible. It just in this version it said the people, they don't even remember. As soon as things turns bad, you don't remember the good, but they're ready for it. So anyway, I'm going to do something kind of. I just wanted to get that out of the way to start this lesson, and let's just go to Sundays. Joseph's rise to power. I think I read this already. It says, what is God's place in the success of Joseph? Now remember, the version I was reading, Pharaoh said, hey, these guys back in prison, or the dungeon as I read it, they said, you're the guy to tell me my dream. Can you tell me my dream? And in my version, Joseph said what to the Pharaoh? He said, sure. What? He said, I can't, but God can. Yes, that's what, right there. He said, well, so what is God's place in the success of Joseph? I don't write the material, I'll just read the questions here so you guys can answer, but this is the author's putting this together. It's an important part of that story, or the author of this lesson thinks it is. What is God's place in the success of Joseph? Does he just want to be just all kind of quiet on the side? Or what you just answered there, Joseph is definitely supporting, hey, there's a God. Back there, wait, back there. Yeah. Same thing as Nebuchadnezzar. Yes, Daniel, again, I reiterate just so people can hear on the, but you mentioned Daniel and his dealings with Nebuchadnezzar. Same, yep. One thing is that you said that events, God is in charge of the events, is he's not only in charge of interpreting the dream, but who's the one that makes it rain? Who's the one that sends God? Yes, God. God is the one that's totally in charge of the famine. He's totally in charge if it's going to rain. Here's a side note. I'm trying to get that word right. James is not here today. James makes that work perfectly. So there was down at Hot Springs, I used to go to church at Hot Springs, and there's a gentleman down there that was talking about, natural rain and crops and such. And he mentioned, God is in charge of everything. And there's a verse in the Bible that says that the rain falls on the wicked like it does the righteous. And so God is still in charge of things. But famines do happen. God's in charge of famine. Go ahead. Yes, you're definitely answering the question there. Yeah, what is God's place? Yeah, God's place was always with Joseph. But when he went to met with the king, then the king needs to know that there's the God that helps meet Joseph. I think the author brought out, I think it's on Friday, they brought out a question if things hadn't worked out so well for Joseph, would he still be back in prison believing in God? That was the question. Of course he would have. Yeah, I really believe he would have. But it was just presented that it's great the way the story worked out, and he met his brothers again. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm under the impression that no, he believed in God. It made his life more enjoyable in prison. He was a happy guy. So I'm not saying prison is a good place, but he had a positive attitude. Hey, there's one thing at the bottom of the lesson that you had just mentioned his grandfather and his dad and such. Okay, Joseph's dad was Jacob. Jacob's dad was Isaac. Okay. Isaac's dad was Abraham. And here at the bottom of the lesson on Sunday, I can't say I'm a huge scholar of the Bible, but it mentioned, we know that hierarchy right there. Abraham, then Isaac, and then there was Esau and Jacob, and then Jacob had Benjamin and Joseph, and then he had all the tribes of Israel, Reuben, Judah, and the rest. But the thing is it mentioned here in the bottom lesson that it said, Joseph has two sons whose names show Joseph's experience of God's providence, which has transformed the memory of pain into joy, which means Manasseh, and the former affliction into fruitfulness. That means Ephraim's that name. What a powerful example of how God has turned something bad into something very good. So it just brought up there, if I hadn't read this lesson, and I walked in here today and you said, yeah, but, Joseph had two sons, and then, their name means something, I would have looked blankly at you and said, what? What's that mean? I would have. Now, I've heard of Manasseh, but when I hear the name Manasseh, what always sticks in my mind, isn't that a Civil War battlefield or something? Manasseh? I know it's biblical, but here, educate me. Do we know anything about Manasseh and Ephraim? Does anything stand out other than their names right here? Sound like good people. But I'm ready to be educated. I don't know if there's anything else in the Bible about these two gentlemen. But I learned something here. Oh, a question at the bottom. What are ways that others should be able to see from the kind of lives that we live the reality of our God? So again, what are ways that others should be able to see from the kind of lives that we live the reality of our God? I think they're talking about Joseph there, aren't we? We're talking about the fact that those two people in prison seen that Joseph was a good guy. Well, not that he just could interpret dreams, but he was a good guy. I don't want to get too wild with this story, but if Joseph was in prison and he's a crazy guy, I don't know, barks at the moon, and apparently he can interpret dreams or whatever, he's a wild man, do you think that these two guys in prison would say, hey, we need to tell the king about him? I don't think it would have worked out. Not really. I mean, that's just an opinion of mine, but if one of those guys wanted out of jail, okay, I just read you the story, and so he wanted to set the king up with somebody that could get the job done. So I think Joseph, I think that the way he behaved in jail, he was a good guy, and he could be counted on. And I think that goes a long ways. So here's a question. I didn't make it up. In what ways can we live? What are the ways that others should be able to see from the kind of lives that we live the reality of our God? Hey, that given be said, without, how can I say this? Again, I have two daughters in high school. And high school is just full of fads. And, the thing you try to tell them is that I was graduating high school in 1988. And there was ripped jeans, ripped jeans. Those fads come back around. I never thought I was going to see it. When I was in high school, I had uncles, aunts. This is in 1988, and they graduated in probably 58 or 62. And they said, those fads come around. There's short hair, there's long hair. Then there's short hair, then there's long hair. I looked at them, and I'm like, no, it can't be. Whatever's happening now is the deal. It's no, they come back around. Hey, this ripped jean thing, I don't know if you guys have seen that. My daughter's finally pointed that out, that ripped jeans. I'm like, now they're skinny jeans, they're ripped, but does it matter? Ripped jeans is a ripped jean. And I said, they did that a long time ago. There's nothing new about that. But anyway, what I'm talking about here is clothes and everything and such like that. I don't know if I was talking to my wife, but I'm not here. They say clothes makes the man or whatever. I don't got a tie on this morning. There's people that dress a lot better than me. Okay? But there is a way you present yourself. Apparently, Joesph presented himself without you. I think that people got to see that you're not crazy. You're not weird. And it might be the way you dress. It might be the way you talk. Clothes. Oh, I just got done saying for Facebook. I got done saying clothes make the man. That's just a saying. Elaine here said that clothes. How did you say that? Clothes do not make the person. All right. Okay. What's that? Doesn't make the person man or woman. Okay. I don't. In the heart. Character. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So then, obviously, you got to go deeper than that. What are people going to see in you? What kind of lives is the reality of our God? Yeah. If it's not going to be clothes, Roy.
What goes around comes around.
It seems it always does. A lot was said right there. A lot was said. I can't repeat it all for Facebook. There was people down in that prison. They seen that Joesph wasn't just a dream interpreter. They liked being around him. He was positive, and he wasn't just like you just said, Roy, focused on, oh man, this is horrible. I want to say, I'll tell a little story here. I'm trying to answer the question here. What are ways that others should be able to see from the kind of lives that we live the reality of our God? Okay, so I'll tell a story. Okay, my wife was telling me in the workplace. She's a nurse, and she was talking. Probably, I'm 51 years old. She worked with some people that, I don't know, they're in their late 30s, in their 40s. And historically, it transcends probably the last 6 decades or whatever. But, when you work with people, you kind of be posh, kind of like I'm dressed up today. I know you might not like me if you see me in line at Taco Bell. I don't know. I think you would. But everybody puts on a different face. Well, not at work you do, because you're working with people, and that's just what you do. The disc jockey on the radio station, he could have the flu, but he's going to be happy Monday morning on your drive to work. You don't know, that guy could be sick, or a woman. Okay? So everybody, when you're working with other people and it's your job, you just ante up. Because, well, she was telling me that behind the scenes, she says the swear words. Lane, you're a nurse, aren't you? She said the swear words. Okay? And so I'm not trying to wow you today. That's always been around. Okay? But after a while, I don't think that there's any words out there that lightning's going to come down and get you. Okay? It's not that. I'm looking at I finally realized very few people probably want to even listen to me. Okay? Why do I need to put a bunch of other words in there when you're like, just, all right, that's it, Kevin. Done with you. Okay? Swear words. blank, 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 blank this, blank, blank that. Okay? But she says behind the scenes, she said, I'm like, so these people got college educations. What are they doing? But it's never too patient. Are they kind? Of course they are. They're very generous and kind people. These are very nice people. But that's just banter, okay? And that's not to a patient or a customer, but that's just people. So I hope you know I'm not being judgmental here, okay? But I look at myself. Is it that if you see me stub my toe or something, and I'm like, it's maybe not so much you think, well, that guy don't go to church or something. I think what it is you send a message out that people don't want to hear static. Because if I'm like that, that's frustration. People don't want that frustration. People want to be happy. People want to smile. They don't want to hear me, blah, 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 blank, 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 blank. Okay, so where's my story going with? I was talking to this contractor. Well, he's not a contractor. He was a general, the supervisor on site. And I did some work years ago. We had some trucking. He added on to the cancer center at the hospital. Okay, that's the Vikarovich, and they added on. That was like 20 years ago. Anyway, this guy is very good at his job and everything, and I was fortunate to learn a lot, even though I was just. But he said this. He did a job out in California, and he said they had to pull in their little trailers, and that's where they had the plans. The plans inside, the engineering plans. Yeah, he was working. I know you're from California, and he was San Bernardino. He did a theater. This was about 8-9 years ago. Did a theater, and he said they had these trailers, and he said he did his thing, ran the job, and then there was one for the engineers that did, and then there was another for just the person that owned the crew. And he said that person that owned the crew, he said, he's a great guy. And he said, boy, he'd swear. Them bomb words. He said, blank, 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 blank. And he said, they hired a secretary for this person. And he said he was a nice guy, but he said, boy, he just couldn't have a conversation walking the job site. What are we going to do? We're going to get the concrete in here. And blank, 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 blank. He said, so I hired a secretary. And he said, so we have my trailer over here, and his trailer, that's all on the job site. And he said, they hired a secretary, and she was a young, he said, African-American lady. And he said, during the day, he said, I would hear this lady launch into gospel music songs coming out of that trailer that housed the office. Gospel music songs. And he said, finally, this went on for a week. He said it wasn't continuous. He said, I went over there. This guy just told me this story here last week. He said, I finally went over and I asked her, so you like to sing? And she goes, yeah. He says, when my boss launches into a tirade of his filth, I launch into my gospel songs. And he said, that's how that job site got built. He said, she just drowned him out. But that's what she did to send a message up. I'm tired of hearing it. I never heard anything like that before. She wasn't going to change him. And was he a nice guy? Probably was. But that was her. And he said, he goes, oh. And he said, he told me, he said, made sense. Because he said, I knew him. And she was just tired of hearing it. So she would just launch into a gospel song. And he said she could sing too. Just to drown it out. All right, so I'm trying to answer the question here today without being too deep. I think what Roy was talking about is people like people that are secure and are happy. And I'm just scratching the surface here. People just don't want your static, your misery. They want to know that there's something better, something positive. Go ahead. They see. Growing up, come Seventh-day Adventist Church, you mentioned that if he seen that something needed to change, it was work. It was a daily. They had to get some work done. I mean, even though it's prison, something needs to. And growing up in the Adventist Church, there was one thing that I heard from early. It was as a Christian, you need to do your fair share of work. or if in a work situation, you need to pitch in. If you got some ideas, or at least do your job. I mean, the bottom thing is if you're asked to do something and it needs to be done, do it. And nothing's ever changed my attitude about that. But at first, I always thought growing up that maybe it was an apologetic kind of statement. Say like Joesph, he believes in a God. He doesn't believe in Egyptian gods, but he's a hard worker. So my God counts for something, or my religion counts for something. And then, so you see where I'm going with this. I was thinking to myself, all right, so the Adventist Church preaches this work ethic. Is that to show the world that, well, we're good people? Then finally I come full circle from that, and then I decide, no, I don't go to any other churches. Well, I have, but I think that the story of Joesph transcends what religion you are. And the fact that he was where he was at, and God counts, and I'm going to get up and do some work, and we all need to do something here. I think that it's a Christian perspective. Now again, I don't come, I work with family, I've worked with other people, but I just touching on this, I'm really talking about the bottom question there, lives that we live, the reality of our God. I'm just going to ask you this right now. At what point do you really have to work for the employer? I mean, do you, as a Christian, do you owe it? I know it's been said just right there, but what's your thoughts? I know your employer can use you, when apparently it's like, wait a second. I'm not going to work another shift. I got family at home. But the same thing, what's being brought up here is that is a good work ethic, Christianity hand in hand? Lane says yes. A good work ethic and Christianity goes hand in hand. So yes. Okay, I want to say something here right now. I was at the new Walmart yesterday, and these two individuals were looking for, I was getting a lawnmower battery, and this couple that were probably in the early 70s, late 60s, they're 69, 70, they had two batteries. They needed another one. They had one, must have been a pickup, need two. And they asked the gentleman, can you call the old Walmart and see if they had another one? And this gentleman tells them, I can, but they don't answer. I was like, I don't know, that's lame. What, are you trying to get out of work? Come on, make a call. I mean, it's Walmart. They want your money. They got to all work together. So the gentleman goes, it was one of those looks. I tried to tell my wife and my kids when I said I have to do those looks. He says that, and the couple look at him, and he looks back, and the silence gets a little quiet. He goes, okay. So he goes over, he makes his call. He's on the call for, I don't know, 4 minutes. I mean, really, I'm not going to stand here and make you do 4 minutes. But 4 minutes go by. Finally, I went up to him. Hey, where can I find what I'm looking for? I go, yeah, back over there. Okay. Finally, he gets off the phone. And he says, they're not answering. Okay. We all know you've got similar stories. Okay. But you understand the world's imploded in on itself and the work ethic and everything. I seen this yesterday. Okay. It's happening, but you wonder, I got kids. I'm raising my kids. Okay, you're going to have to redo the work ethic. I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and crab about the world's different or whatever. How do you move forward? So that's what I'm looking at. I got 2 kids. How do I move forward? I'm not going to be left in a rocking chair somewhere complaining that nobody knows how to work. I mean, what do I do now? This is what you do. You're there. I guess it comes back to that old adage. Somebody's got to do it. So back to Joesph. He was in prison. It's the good work ethic. But again, I'm not up front here thinking that I don't get good service at businesses, and so I can come here and complain today. But what do you do when you're raising some kids and you tell them that you're going to have to pick up the slack or do something at work? You can't just look at a phone and decide, whistle Dixie, someone else is going to get it. I mean, there's just some basic things that you have to pitch in. And in the story of Joesph is right there. Things started changing in that prison because he looked over and said, I can do that, and we do this. And so again, Elaine, since you mentioned it, I mean, can you explain to me, though, why is it that everything I said, I swear to you, I think God wants it that way. But I can't say why, other than the story of Joesph. Can you tell me exactly why God wants somebody to pick a phone up and answer it? Why God wants somebody to say, why? Why is that? That God wants that. Explain it to me. Oh, back there. Go ahead. Why? Okay, what was said is, okay. Okay, whatever you do with your hands, do it with all your might. Okay. Good, but I'm just doing for the camera. He did not judge the co-workers around him or prisoners, but they were co-workers. Yeah. Well, I know I'm still on the bottom question there, but I just wanted to hit that again. If somebody sees that you're a good worker, they might think you're a Christian too. Because the thing is, I got to talk to my kids as we move forward. I'm being a little bit of a drama person up here, but I don't know. How many of you really think that you're going to have to retrain people on, you got to do something there at work? On work ethics. True. You believe it? Elaine believes that there is, okay, Elaine says that there's going to be different, and I'm talking about children. I'm 15-year-olds that just because that other adult there decides that I ain't doing it, that doesn't set the standard. And so the thing is I know I come into the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I heard it ever since I was a kid, work matters. And go ahead, Ray. Right, yes. And what was said is sometimes the employee doesn't know if he should do something because that's not his area. The thing is a good point, I see it. From the story of Joesph, it shows initiative. I mean, I know I'm taking forever on this topic, but I'm talking about how people can see God through you. I don't want to... That initiative, the story of Joesph, and it was mentioned right here, his initiative. He looked around and said, things can be better. He's seen the initiative, and he was willing to push it. Because whoever ran the prison could say, all right, I'm done with you. Because you're causing problems. Now I got to work harder. Go ahead.
Sometimes when you're on a job, you have to do somebody else's job.
Okay, what was said here is that before you can do your job, you might have to do somebody else's. And talking to kids and everything, I want to tell them what you said, Elaine. Sometimes, I call it picking up slack. Picking up the slack. That means that you're going to have to do someone else's job before you move on to do yours. And it's not as you put it, it's not a fair world. Pitching in, yeah. I do work with my hands, okay, I do. And I was fortunate growing up that, I wouldn't say fortunate, but we had a dairy, okay? And that's almost like a hotel where you get to make beds, okay? Even though I never had a hotel. But you understand where I'm going. You take a crew of kids, and there's a joke. You know, say you got 200 cows to milk, okay? So you get them in, and the first one, you got these hoses, and you're washing off. You got to put the milkers on and everything. And there's this joke, you know, you're training somebody, and then they ask that question, so what do I do? I mean, it's a 4-hour milk session, okay? So you do the first cow. Well, what else are we going to do? You know, that's the joke. It's like making bets. Well, what else are we going to do? You're going to do 200 of those. That's what you're going to do. Anyway, by training, though, we were fortunate because it's assembly line work. Do you understand? It's assembly line that you're going to do this over and over and over and over. And the next person does this. Oh, and then somebody comes along behind and dries paper towels. It's assembly line, but next that person waiting, you got to keep moving because this person's got a hand. Okay, Anyway, I know I'm winding down. The kids are coming out. We didn't get to talk about Benjamin. But I'm going to say up front here is that now that it was mentioned right here and over back there, is that the biggest thing that I got out of this lesson this morning is that you guys are telling me that the work ethic and Christianity goes hand in hand, and it comes from the story of Joesph. And I come home last night, I told my wife about that Walmart story, and I got kids that are going to enter the workforce, and I think that as a church, that's going to be a huge thing to try to teach kids that Christianity and work ethic go hand in hand, because it's lost now. It's gone. It's gone. And I did not want to be that person. I'm too young to be that person, like talking, boy, nobody knows how to work anymore. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to. But the idea that you don't have to pitch in, or you don't have to have the initiative, and it was just brought up for, and I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the boss that tells somebody that if you were like Joesph, you'd work harder. Because that just, like, I don't want to be that person, because that makes me look like I'm just trying to get you to work harder so I can make more money or something. I don't want to be that person. But there's got to be a point when, in Joseph's situation, there was nothing going to be gained. Like Elaine was saying, sometimes you just got to do it. Joesph wasn't going to get out of prison just because he wanted those tools in better shape. He wasn't. But we just got to do it. And so anyway, hey, we got like 2 or 3 minutes left. I didn't lecture too bad up here. I don't think I did. I tried to tell you dream stories, and I got to try to tell you how you're going to show yourself. I think work ethic in the community is big, that people can see that you're a Christian by work ethic. Is there anything else in this lesson that you wanted to say? Because I got like 3 minutes. Anything else? We didn't cover the fact that Joesph seen his brothers again. Was there anything that hit you? I know I read the story of just about the dreams. I did not read the story about meeting Joesph. But it's a story that we hear over and over. Is there anything out of it that strikes you as interesting? In current events? What's going on in the world today? Go ahead.
I think the
Forgiveness. Okay. Yeah. So what's mentioned, the forgiveness part of this story, is that he forgave his brothers. And hey, once his dad figured out that he didn't die by a wild animal, he had to do some forgiving too. And I know they make that joke, and I know there wasn't Thanksgiving, but yeah, can you imagine that Thanksgiving? Everybody's around because he has to forgive him, and dad has to forgive him, and that very awkward moment, huh? Because as soon as that dad figured out, what do you mean he's alive? You told me he was dead. The bloody garments, which was that? Goat's blood? Lamb's blood? Yeah. Yeah, so there was a whole lot of forgiving going on. Well, guys, I'm going to end the lesson. Well, I appreciate you putting up with me, okay? And, bow our heads, please. Dear Jesus, thank you for this nice summer day. And got 2 churches going on. Go with the other church up there and do an outside church. Go with us today too. In your name, amen. Thank you again.